Hi class, my name is Andrew McClendon, and this is my final concept map presentation for the spring 2018 semester for pathophysiology. And for my presentation I decided to do multiple sclerosis. Okay, so what is multiple sclerosis? So it's an autoimmune disease in which the body attacks its own tissues, in this case the myelin sheaths. What are the myelin sheaths? They are basically a conducting mechanism. Think of a wire to anything, even to your computer. So you have the metal, usually copper, running through the middle of the wire, and then you have that rubber protective coating that runs along the outside, so you don't get electrocuted if you grab onto the wire. So the myelin sheaths are basically that rubber coating, and your body uses them as a insulator and a conducting mechanism to surround nerves and to conduct electrical impulses via your central nervous system throughout your entire body. So in this disease, the myelin sheaths, they start to deteriorate and break down, and you have usually like these electrical impulses that are sent down through the myelin sheaths are there to do anything, like say to make a fist, or to flex your arm, or to smile even. This is information that your brain relays via your central nervous system throughout your entire body, and you don't even have to think twice about it normally. But when these sheaths start to break down and deteriorate, what you start to see is delays. Either it's not firing the way that it should be, or it's not getting there at all. Sometimes it's just blockages. When you start to get these delays and these blockages, then you start to see physiologic changes in your body, both physiologic and mental, as a matter of fact. And it affects your body's ability to command and regulate your bodily functions. Now, there are a couple different kinds: progressive and relapsing remitting. Relapsing remitting is the most common. It's the one that we see in most cases. So basically you'll get more or less attacks in which you have periods to where the disease is active and you are symptomatic. And then you have periods where it's not flared up and you may be asymptomatic. So here's one thing you have to remember with this. If you have an attack, say this is your baseline. Now, you have an attack, you get through the attack, and you are back to baseline. Now, if your baseline was here before, the damage that was done during that attack actually altered your baseline. So, if you were here before, you've deteriorated to here. So your baseline is never the same. And as a matter of fact, with each attack, your baseline gets a little bit lower and a little bit lower. And that's why it's a progressive disease. So as it gets lower, you start to see more permanent changes, more immobility, more contraction of the muscles, more cognitive effects, and sometimes sometimes it can be rapid over the course of months. Sometimes it's over the course of a long time, many years. Some people, their symptoms never really cause them this much trouble. Sometimes it's almost like very minimal symptoms. Risk factors, it's very prevalent in the age group of 15 to 60. I know, that's like almost everybody. But you rarely see this in very elderly people, and you also rarely see it in very, very younger people. It's also more prevalent in women. They're twice as likely to develop multiple sclerosis as men. If you have a family history of it, unfortunately, you're also more likely to get it. Smoking is another risk factor. Climate. These are all risk factors. However, the cause of the disease is still largely unknown. There are many scientists that believe that there's like a combination of, like genetic predisposition or a certain amount of risk factors, also combined with some sort of environmental trigger that creates like the perfect storm in which people may potentially end up having this. But there's no like clear and cut like, oh, you were exposed to this, now you have it. That's not really how it works. What type of signs and symptoms are we seeing? Kind of a wide variety. So we'll see numbness and weakness, and the kind of generalized throughout a lot of in the extremities and facial muscles. This can often be an initial symptom, as well as another initial symptom can be blurry vision or loss of vision. This is a very common one. Other signs and symptoms: tremors. Lack of coordination. You start to see as you get those delays in sending the electrical impulses down through the myelin sheaths. Definitely changes in coordination, balance. You get unsteady gait, fatigue, slurred speech. Bowel and bladder dysfunction is another big one. Trouble regulating and maintaining normal bowel habits and bladder habits. Cognitive changes are huge. You especially see this as people get more advanced. Mood changes. But with the cognitive changes you get, it's almost like a decreased mental status. People, in some cases, almost unrecognizable. So this is definitely one of the more serious and obvious signs and symptoms. This is usually diagnosed through brain MRI. It shows on the MRI, it'll pop up and it'll show a lot of times lesions on the brain or spinal cord, or damage to these myelin sheaths. So you can tell by seeing this, but usually it's a combination. You'll get the imaging, but you'll also get you put it into the context of the disease. You take the signs and the symptoms that you're having, and then you compare it with the imaging, and you can see like, oh, this kind of all adds up. The combination usually makes diagnosis pretty straightforward in most cases. In some, just to clarify, the relapsing remitting is more easy to diagnose, especially with the imaging. Sometimes with the progressive, they have to do a spinal tap, and they will actually they'll analyze your spinal fluid. Not in all cases, but in some cases, they use that to confirm diagnosis. So for treatment, there is no cure for MS. Treatment is aimed at managing and slowing the progression of the disease, as well as controlling the symptoms, and you also speeding up for the recovery from the attacks, and keeping the attacks as short as possible and as infrequent as possible. Ocrevus is the only FDA-approved drug that's approved for treatment of both primary and relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. Beta interferons, they're another commonly prescribed drug for relapsing remitting MS. They can be given in sub-Q or IM injections, and they decrease the frequency, or they have been shown to decrease the frequency and severity of relapses. Steroids are also, steroid injections, another very commonly used treatment with multiple sclerosis. But management of symptoms, such as physical therapy to combat muscle deterioration, very common for patients with multiple sclerosis, especially advanced multiple sclerosis. As they become more immobile, they get very tight, rigid, and spastic. So a lot of them will be on antispasmodics such as baclofen to control these symptoms. And outside of the physical, it's you know, it's a fairly debilitating disease. So you get a lot of depression that comes along with it, a lot of loss of control. So people who have it, like, as they get depressed, obviously they need help controlling these symptoms as well. So that's pretty much it. My final concept map presentation on multiple sclerosis. Obviously, I'm going to post this to YouTube so all you guys can watch it. So any questions you may have, you know, post in the forum on the class page. You can email me or do whatever you like. But great semester, guys. Pleasure being in class with all of you. Best of luck to everybody. Thank you.